If the Sussexes thought the Hollywood Reporter piece was bad, wait until you hear this.
And Prince William's sneaky social media strategy. Have you been talking to the Prince online?
Welcome to Heirs and Spares, the show that dives into the fascinating world of two of the most recognized royal couples from both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Kinsey Schofield, and I'll be bringing you updates on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex here in California.
And I'm Katie Nicholl, and I'll have all the latest news from the Prince and Princess of Wales here in the UK. And Kinsey, I think we have to really start today's show off with that really remarkable visit by the Princess of Wales, which was kept secret until she was safely in at the Royal Marsden and doing what was her first solo engagement in over a year. And I think it was very, very significant that she chose to go back to the Royal Marsden. It was simultaneously announced that her and her husband, the Prince of Wales, are now co-patrons of the Royal Marsden. It was one of the first charities that Prince William inherited from his late mother, Princess Diana. So there's a beautiful symmetry there. And of course, for the Princess of Wales, who's been through this pretty astonishing and difficult cancer journey in the past year, to see her back at work, but to see her at work doing something that is now closely aligned with her life, felt very poignant, very special. I found it really moving. And there was that one picture, I think it was taken by Chris Jackson. He always seems to manage to get the best pictures, where the princess is walking into the Royal Marsden and she's looking up at the sign. And you know, she revealed that she hadn't always gone through the front door. She went through side entrances to avoid being seen, because we also discovered that she was having her cancer treatment there, her chemotherapy there. And it was just that moment of her looking up, and I thought, gosh, this is like a collision of her two lives. This is her in her public role doing what we expect her to do. A hospital visit wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary, would it, for the Princess of Wales? But this was the hospital where she'd been treated. This was her coming back to see those staff, probably some of whom had treated her, possibly, to thank them for the support that they're giving, to meet with other patients who are going through similar treatments to what she went through. And I just thought it was a very, very powerful image and a really important visit. And I think we're probably going to see more of the Princess of Wales carrying out this sort of work.
Absolutely. I did see a quote in Vanity Fair from a woman named Angela Terry. She was a patient at the same hospital, and she talked just about how much hope that visit from Catherine brought other patients. And she said, we don't need to know what cancer she had. We just know she's been through surgery, she's been through chemo, and 1 year later, my goodness, look, she is here. I think that's an important message, because I do still see chatter online where people are overstepping their boundaries when it comes to wanting more information, not only about Catherine's cancer, but about the King's cancer. And to see someone else going through it saying, that doesn't matter. It's just the fact that you lived it. I think that that's a really important message. Also, I know that Catherine probably wanted to present hope. I think she was trying to raise awareness for a hospital that's been incredible to her. But I wonder how much it comforts her to know that that was the reaction of other patients, that they were really grateful that she walked in the door and showed them what could be, how healthy and lovely she looks today.
Absolutely. And as she said, everyone's journey is different. She's not out the woods yet. That's why we are seeing a gradual return to work, as Kensington Palace are calling it. You know, we've spoken together, Kinsey, I know on various occasions, about how it's going to look when she comes back to work. And to all intents and purposes, it looks normal. Here she is, looking very much like she did before, at a hospital, nothing unusual about that. But of course, it's also different because this is so closely entwined with her story. And I think you're absolutely right. This visit is so important in giving others hope. And she will be able to sit there with those patients who would have been able to have looked them in the eye, knowing what they're going through, because she's been through it herself. And she talked about feeling cold during some of the treatment. I mean, we talk about a new level of transparency with our royals, opening up in a way that they never have. And I think Princess Catherine has done that in the most remarkable way and in a way that's made her perhaps more relatable than ever. Hers is a story of hope. She is living proof that you can have a cancer diagnosis, go through surgery, go through treatment, and come out the other side strong and able to, in her case, use that spotlight to shine it on what is now not just really important work, because one in two of us will get a cancer diagnosis,
Mm.
but very personal work, a very personal journey for her. And as I say, I think we will see more of her do that. You raise an interesting point. I just want to pick up on it in terms of the fact that we still don't know what her cancer diagnosis was. And we are in an era where we're learning more about their medical conditions, but neither the King nor the Princess of Wales have chosen to disclose their type of cancer. And I'm told by sources, very senior sources at the palace, this has nothing to do with wanting to retain secrecy around their cancer, but more a case that they don't want to then put too much of a spotlight on whatever cancer it was that they had. They want to put the focus on all cancers, on all treatments. And of course, one of the things that Royal Marsden does and is certainly world famous for is its treatment and its research. It's a pioneering hospital in terms of cancer research. And I think the worry is always that if Kate was to name her cancer and put the spotlight on it, it might then sort of make other cancers seem less important. So I think they're very, very keen for that to not happen. I think both the work of the King and the Princess of Wales now is very much in that arena of cancer. And of course, the Queen, who works closely with Maggie's. But the fact that it's now touched two senior members of the royal family the way it has makes it very real and makes it something that they're going to very much be championing. So it's important work. And as I said earlier, I think we can expect to see her do more of this kind of work in the future.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Imagine having that information and then the months of articles about that specific cancer, which might stop somebody from going into checking, to check a mole out because, we're all fixated on this specific kind of cancer. So that's really interesting that they thought that far ahead, and I applaud it. Let's talk about Prince William because there is a possibility, if you are a football fan, that you could
Which I'm
be.
not, by the way. I'm definitely not interacting with him. But if you're a football fan, you may well have come across Prince William because he revealed on a recent trip to Birmingham, where he just happened to end up in a Wetherspoons pub on his way back at the train station. I mean, talk about Prince of the People. Doesn't get more down and out than a Wetherspoons pub. But he revealed that he is often on fans forums for Aston Villa fans. Now, we know William's a mad football fan. He loves Villa. He's been an Aston Villa supporter his whole life. He's, of course, president of the FA. He loves to go and watch a game. He's taken George to see games, but we had no idea up until now that when he does get a few free minutes, and I don't think there's much free time with those three children and everything he and Catherine juggle, that he does go onto the fans' forums. He sees what's being said about the team. He checks out the chatter, and under a pseudonym, he does engage with some of the other fans. So again, I think it's a lovely insight, isn't it, into something that he's completely passionate about, which I think shows him to be really quite real and ordinary. And of course, from his point of view, he's getting to sort of interact with people that he otherwise wouldn't. They have a shared passion. I'm sure some of the language on there is pretty colourful. He enjoyed speaking with some fans at this Wetherspoons pub. And I think one of the things that came across, I mean, I suppose you would expect it with him being such a big football fan, and as I say, president of the FA, is his knowledge of the game. He knew all about potential transfers, all about potential business deals. It's I think it's clearly a really important outlet for Prince William as well. And, when Kate was going through her treatment, one of the things he did was took George to a football game. And I think he can just, whether he's there at the game or he's watching from home, it's just wonderful escapism for him. It's something that he loves. It's something that he's passionate about. And, now we learn that he does engage with other Villa fans.
I love that. It's just so fun to imagine a prince on a forum, like a
Absolutely.
Reddit, or it also he is so when it comes to his mental health, it feels like he's so disciplined about his mental health. I always imagined that he would stay away from the internet because it can be such a toxic space, especially last year with everything that surrounded his wife, poor Catherine, with the Where is Kate drama that, burst onto the pop culture scene and really was just so callous in a way. But to know that he does have his little outlets where there are safe spaces. He can have fun and engage with people that are passionate about the same things he is passionate about. It makes me feel happy for him because I did feel after last year that, man, this guy probably has to stay off the internet. Otherwise, how are you not defeated,
Well, I think staying off, I mean, none of us can stay off the internet. I mean, I think, I know certainly when it comes to their children, screen time is limited. They're quite strict about what the children are able to go onto. They don't allow them onto social media. But, of course, with William and Catherine having their own social media accounts on Instagram, on X, they can't have their heads in the sand. And to go back to the point you were making about that time when it was the big Where's Kate conspiracy theories and everything else, I'm sure there was a point where they shut off reading because it just verged on the ridiculous, as well as being incredibly offensive and upsetting. But of course they were aware of it. They are aware of what's written and what's said. I don't think they dig too deep into the comment sections. None of us should. But they do have to have that awareness. And I think he's very aware of social media and mental health. But clearly, when it comes to these fans forums and interacting with these fans, I mean, listen, I've never been on one, Kinsey, so I don't know what they're like. As I say, I imagine the conversation and the language is probably quite colourful, but probably a really great community there. And for him to sort of be able to slip in and out of that anonymously, I think is probably just a bit of fun and a bit of escapism, as you say, at a time when he's really needed it.
Let's talk about this Vanity Fair piece that has exploded all over the place. All weekend long, I had people in my inbox sending it to me. I'm like, you guys, I
Yeah,
saw I saw this a long time ago.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but a pretty powerful piece, I guess, if you have been curious as to what's been going on with the Sussexes, or if you're looking for some sort of scale as to the amount of success the Sussexes have achieved over the last almost 5 years now.
Mm.
Um, is there any piece that stood out to you? I've said this a couple of times already, but when I walked away from it, I was embarrassed to be like, the biggest takeaway for me was that Beyonce potentially declined the podcast. There are so many bigger stories within that piece, but to me, it was like, oh, Beyonce didn't want to do a podcast. What stood out
Mm.
to you?
Well, I think it's clearly been very well researched. The journalist in question has obviously spent a lot of time speaking to numerous sources, some who have gone on record, the majority, as you might expect, have not. I mean, I think it's pretty damning for Harry and Meghan. I mean, when you consider that Vanity Fair was the magazine that sort of launched Meghan as Harry's new girlfriend, that Wild About Harry front page cover story that was, so positive for her. 5 years on, at a point where you might expect the couple to be the toast of Tinseltown, to be producing brilliant content with this multi-million-dollar deal. In fact, one of the things they say in Vanity Fair is that it's not the $100 million deal, which is the figure put out there. But rest assured, it's a big multi-million-dollar deal they've got. You would expect, I think, them to be having much more of an impact, creating award-winning content, really having Archwell and their philanthropic platform exploding on a global level. And I think the feeling is that they just haven't lived up to expectations. And, coming from Vanity Fair, which is, I think, always very fair. I mean, I would say that, and listen, I just full disclosure, I work for Vanity Fair. I'm their royal correspondent, but, it is always top quality journalism. It's impartial, it's balanced, it's well researched. For the Sussexes to come out of a piece like this, the way they have, I think, well, they must be, well, I would imagine deeply, deeply disappointed because they've already had the Hollywood Reporter sort of turn on them. There are many other publications that have sort of been less than flattering, I think, about their foray into Hollywood. As I say, this is a look 5 years on, and you know, there seems to be more of what we've heard rumors of before that seem to be more substantiated in this piece, that members of staff or people that worked with Meghan sort of needed therapy afterwards because it was such a traumatic experience working with her. Of course, that sort of fuels again all of those stories about the allegations of bullying, which you'll remember came out of the palace. And it feels like very little has changed in terms of that respect. And there's been quite limited progress. I mean, when I sort of sit and reflect on it, that's how I come away from the article feeling. And so I'm sure they must feel pretty disheartened and deeply disappointed with the piece and probably not very happy.
Can I ask you what the process is for writing a piece like this, if there are people that aren't familiar with the
Yeah.
type of
Well, I
journalism?
mean, look, listen, as I said, I've not written this piece. I've not had anything to do with this piece, but I can tell you that the research that goes into these pieces, I mean, these are big essays. You know, this isn't just something that's sort of fired off in a matter of days. This will have been months of really getting into their circle, speaking to people who they've worked with, really interviewing people, getting the trust of those people to speak off the record. The research is forensic. The legal checking is unlike anything you've ever experienced. I mean, everything has to be attributed. I mean, it's you know, it's the brilliant magazine that it is for a reason. It's quality journalism. Radhika Jones is a brilliant editor. She's got her finger on the pulse for everything that America seems to be talking about. And this is, this is a brilliant, albeit, for the Sussexes, pretty damning cover story. And of course it's got the world talking because it's Vanity Fair, and it's the one place where I think Harry and Meghan would actually be wanting to seek the seal of approval. But in terms of what goes into a cover story like this, months and months of work, researching, legal checking, fact checking. I've worked for many publications, but at Vanity Fair, it's on an exceptional level. It's to the very, very highest standard.
Yeah, I just did a murder documentary for HBO, and I could not believe the amount of fact checking that, I did it. I sat there, recorded it, walked away, forgot about it. And then legal came back. And, I had to provide all of the documents, all of the research that I had, all of my sources.
Yeah.
So I imagine that Vanity Fair is similar, if not higher in their expectations when it comes to that. I don't remember if there was the classic line at the bottom that you sometimes see in papers that the Sussexes were approached for comment. I don't remember if that was included.
It was included that they
yeah.
were approached and declined to be interviewed for the piece.
So is it your opinion that that was a mistake? Could sitting down with them, could that have changed the tone? Or do you think that they were better off to distance themselves from this as much as
Well, I think unless they were going to grant the magazine a proper sit down, I think probably they were wise to not respond, because there was so much in the piece that I think it would have been difficult for them to address every concern. And I think, this is a couple who like to have control of the narrative. And this is very obviously a story where they were not going to have control. This was never going to be a sort of sit down with Harry and Meghan. And I think their strategy is probably, by not getting involved, by not commenting, they put less heat into the story. And, eventually, after a few days, people will stop talking about it. But I think the impact of this cover story will continue days after publication, because it's, as I say, it feels like very much a milestone here. 5 years since they moved to America, and that sort of sense of slight disappointment in terms of what they've achieved. Of course, some of it's been beyond their control. We were expecting Meghan's cookery show to come up, but because of the fires in LA, and I think rightfully so, she and Netflix made the decision to suspend that for a while. I think it's probably the right thing to do. But there does seem to be a pattern to these hiccups, to things perhaps starting and then being halted. I'm thinking of American sorry,
American
the
Riviera Orchard, but
yeah.
also Harry and
Yeah,
Meghan's
I'm thinking of
reality show. Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking of American Riviera Orchard and the fact that, that's all ready to go, and then suddenly there's an issue over the patent and the naming of it. They do seem to have these setbacks, and I think the media can be quite unforgiving of them. And it seems to be one after the other. They always seem to hit a stumbling block.
It's interesting though, because I agree that this has like the reverberations of something that's not just going to die quietly. Um, because the in December of last year, a source close to the Sussexes, who I do see work with Page Six quite a bit, they do get a lot of great scoops. They, you know, leaked or shared some story about how 2025 was going to be all about the Markle Sparkle. And that, everybody was talking about the Markle Sparkle. Here it comes in 2025. And then this story comes and it just kind of feels like um, it's doused
It's
whatever
a dampener on
buzz.
it. That it is.
Yeah.
It's a dampener, isn't it? It's yes. And I suspect, Kinsey, for Harry and Meghan, it must be really tough. They're trying to get things off the ground. They just don't seem to have enough cheerleaders in a town where supporters are really important.
And I think they did, Katie. I think they did when they first got here.
Mm.
I don't know if people were turned off by. I do think that there are a significant amount of celebrities that have not only been helped by the royal family. If you think of Idris Alba, he started with the Prince's Trust. He says, "There's no way I'd be the man, the celebrity,
I
the."
think the lack of philanthropy has been a big issue. I think that, of course they wanted to go out and become financially independent, so you can't really knock them for going and getting these big dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify. But I certainly feel from my perspective, the sort of the heavy focus on that and the book deals and the muckraking, which has formed the content of the book, the TV, the Netflix series, Harry and Meghan, has just overshadowed any of the good work that they've done. And, the one thing we know about both of them is they are genuine philanthropists. They want to do good. And I think, there was just so much potential for Archwell, and yet we've heard so little of Archwell in the
Mhm.
last 5 years. And I think that's been a mistake on their part.
Really quickly before I let you go, did there's been a pretty intense backlash about Harry and Meghan showing up at the fires. There's a podcast here, one of the oldest podcasts by comedians that last week we're talking about how he said one of his daughters was volunteering and some of her friends were volunteering and they shut things down so that Harry and Meghan can come do a walkthrough. And there was real resentment there saying, if Nick Cannon, who is an actor and a personality, is out in the middle of everybody, lugging bags and feeding people, why are things cleared out for Harry and Meghan? And I'm not telling you that because I need you to respond to that specifically, but I just want you to know the kind of tone. I know you saw Justine Bateman's comments about Harry and Meghan's presence out there. Do you think that was a misstep when it comes to PR? Could they have done something in Montecito or through Archwell alone that would have received a better reaction than showing up private tour with the mayor of Pasadena?
Mm.
There has been a lot of, resentment there from locals about that visit.
Listen, for a couple that are not afraid to sort of roll their sleeves up, and we saw that very much during the pandemic when they went out volunteering and doing that. I think it was surprising. Of course, there are security concerns, I suppose, playing devil's advocate to take into consideration when it comes with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And I don't think anyone wants to sort of politicize what's been just an awful tragedy in Los Angeles. I mean, they did have, I believe, some people staying at their homes. I mean, it's not like they've done nothing, but I do understand why for some people, sort of private tour by the mayor may not sit well. Actually, what people need is help.
Yeah.
And as I say, usually Harry and Meghan are pretty quick to respond in those situations.
All right. Well, agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Katie, it was so interesting to get that insight from you just on what the process is going into writing a piece like that, because it was like so long. It was an
Yes.
entire podcast episode. I just
Yeah.
played the audio version, and the house was clean by the time it was over.
Yeah.
So
It's like
that
a mini book, isn't it? So don't underestimate the huge amount of work that goes into a piece like that. So very, very interesting. And not the cover story that Harry and Meghan, I'm sure, were hoping for.
And now we have to wait a month. Now we have to wait a month and a week until we can talk about Meghan's show, because that they postponed that for so long. But we'll cover
We
it.
will. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. And it was so good to see you again, Katie.
You too. Have a safe week.
Bye.